SQL. Moonlight pooled like molten silver across the high ramparts of the Red Keep, bathing every merlin and murder hole in a trembling luminance that seemed to breathe with the night wind. A hush had fallen over King's Landing, that uneasy silence that hangs in the air before the first tremor of a storm. In the labyrinthine corridors beneath the wide sky, torches guttered, their flames flinching whenever the breeze found a crack in the ancient stone. Far below, the dark ripple of Blackwater Bay lapped against barnacle-encrusted pilings, whispering secrets no sane man cared to hear. Brandon Stark, yet not Brandon Stark, drifted over those waters as a phantom might. He felt the cool damp kissing phantom cheeks, yet he had no body. He felt the tickle of his own long hair against a brow that was not his. He felt the rustle of woolen furs, though fur was nowhere near this sweltering southern night. He floated, saw, knew. Without understanding how sight and knowing fused within this dream realm he had mastered and dreaded in equal measure. His mind had traveled far before. To ravens, to wolves, to Hodor, even to bygone years that bled into the present like half-remembered songs. But never had he attempted this. Never had the thread drawn him toward a single man. A man of flesh and pulse, and through him to the ruin of kingdoms. He had heard the stories since he was small enough to chase the tales beneath Winterfell's roofs. Aerys II, last dragon crowned of the direct line, had been many things. A friend of Tywin's, a father to Rhaegar, a doting husband cruel to his wife in quiet, a king who loved tourneys, and then at last the mad king shrieking burned them all while his own Kingsguard turned blade against him. But Brandon Stark had never heard the wind itself sob with the memory of that flame. Tonight, the wind cried. The weirwood roots, knotted beneath the snows of Winterfell, had hummed like plucked harp strings when Bran slipped beyond the world of skin and stone. They had tugged at him, coaxing, compelling. Come see, come know, come mend. He had surrendered because he must surrender, because the call of the Greenseer is a summons older than laws or lords. And so his spirit flew. Over the neck where ghost mists hid black water pools, over the King's Road lined by harvest fires, over the crownlands where golden lanterns flickered like scattered stars among the dark orchards. He descended upon the Red Keep as silently as dew falls upon a blade of grass. At first he lingered in the shadows of the royal apartments, tasting the air through a mind that was not his. Scents flooded him. Sandalwood and old parchment, damp wool, and the cloying perfume of rotting rose petals left too long in crystal basins. Footsteps approached and retreated, soldierly and measured, echoing against gold-vined marble. Lannister crimson glimmered at the throat of a young guardsman on watch. Though this was long years before the lion would betray the dragon. Bran watched him yawn, shift his spear from sore shoulder to sore shoulder, and thought, he has no inkling what horrors tomorrow will bring. Farther in, the King's Solar waited, its heavy door carved with three-headed dragons wrought in relief so lifelike they seemed to writhe beneath the torchlight. From under that door crawled a chill that had nothing to do with winter or stone. It beckoned him close, lapping at him like a tide. Bran wavered. Wolves know the air before the trap is sprung. Ravens know when lightning will split the sky. And something in him knew the doorway could not be crossed without a price. Yet the roots had called him here. The song of time itself hummed behind that black oak. He passed through wood as easily as through mist. Within, a lone candelabrum guttered upon a heavy oaken table littered with scrolls. Some cracked with age, others freshly broken. Melted wax pooled around thin silver candlesticks, in shapes that reminded Bran of melted swords, half-forged and abandoned. The air smelled of ash and oil, of smoke long gone cold yet unwilling to depart. It smelled, too, of fear. On an ironwood bench by the shuttered window sat King Aerys Targaryen, silver-gold hair spilling about his shoulders, like threads of the moon woven through spider silk. He wore a dressing gown of midnight velvet, unbelted, baring a pale throat, and the faint shimmer of dragon-scale patterned embroidery upon his nightshirt. One hand clawed restlessly at the armrest, nails having grown long and ragged for want of trimming. The other hand trembled around a half-empty goblet of Dornish red. Aerys stared at nothing, eyes wide and glazed, as though listening to voices no one else could hear. Bran hovered. Could he hover? Did one hover beside that quivering mind? The room pulsed, each candle flame surging with the beat of a fearful heart. He had never attempted to slip into the consciousness of a man in the past, never dared pierce that final veil. The three-eyed raven had warned him. The past is written, the ink dry. Yet the raven was gone now, devoured beneath 1,000 tons of collapsing ice and wood, when the Night King shattered the cave. Bran's choices were Bran's alone. He reached. The king's spirit was a storm of crackling lightning beating wildly within a cage of bone. Bran tasted its bitterness. Old betrayals, imagined slights, love curdled to jealousy, adoration soured by fear. He felt the sting of steel sliding across a ribcage when the knives of assassins scraped too near. Though no assassin in truth had ever struck flesh, only in Aerys-haunted memory were they so close. He heard Tywin's laughter, innocent once, yet twisted now into mockery. He smelt smoke, felt heat, saw green flames roaring up palace walls, even as walls stood whole around him. Aerys' madness was not random. It was a coil of serpents devouring one another, breeding new serpents with every bite. Bran's mind brushed the coil, and the serpent struck. Aerys jerked upright. The goblet clattered, a bloom of red-soaking parchment treaties and treasury ledgers. His gaze darted left, right, then fixed upon the dark. "Who's there?" The voice was raw, fragile, yet laced with command. Bran felt the iron of it echo through a throat he did not own, vibrating against false vocal cords. Had he spoken? No, but he might. Already his consciousness tangled with the king's. Their thoughts bled together like wet inks on parchment. Bran knew that if he angled his will, just so, he could peer through Aerys's eyes, feel through Aerys's skin, and more. He sank. It was like sliding into scalding bathwater, shock tearing through every shred of presence. Whispers filled his skull. Father's voice soft in some distant library warning about pyromancers. Rhaella's gentle plea to see the children. Rhaegar's cittern notes echoing up the stairwell after midnight. A smith's hammer ringing upon sweet steel. The seven tolling, a queen's cry in labor. Then screams, 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 all of them burning. Stop. Bran shaped the word not into speech but into thought, a quiet resonance. He could not let chaos consume him. He was Stark of Winterfell, blood of the first men and the last Greenseer. He was the hand inside the glove now, and the glove must bend. Slowly he listened to the king's heart, a frenzied bird thrashing in a ribcage. He listened until his own heartbeat matched it, then guided them both to slower rhythm. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, oh. Aerys' lungs filled fuller, his shoulders eased. Bran blinked, and it was Aerys who opened eyes. From this vantage the solar appeared brighter, textures sharper. The wine scent stabbed his nostrils. He curled the long fingers of the right hand, marveling at how flesh answered will. He rose, unsteady, toes curling against the plush carpets imported from Norvos. Legs ached, knees popped. How frail Aerys had grown beneath the layers of silk and rumor. He turned toward a tall mirror framed in gilt dragons. Aerys stared back. Hair wild, beard unkempt, eyes ringed with purple bruised crescents. Yet beneath that ruin glimmered the regal bones of the young prince once hailed Aerys the Bright. Bran felt a pang. There is still grace here, still something unbroken. The history he knew said otherwise, but the future was made of choices stacked atop one another like stones in a wall. Perhaps the past could not be rewritten, but a wall could be dismantled stone by stone. He raised a hand, the king's hand, and brushed the mirror. Cold glass met warm flesh. The fingertips trembled. "I am Aerys of House Targaryen," he whispered, voice rough as river gravel. The tremor in the voice belonged half to Bran's disbelief, half to the king's constant fear. But under that fear, Bran felt wonder. It seemed the king, too, sensed something amiss, some other inside him, yet curiosity warred with terror. A knock rapped against the door, soft, deferential. Bran's borrowed heart skipped. "Your Grace." The voice belonged to Sir Garren Mooten, a young knight of the King's Guard barely 2 years in white. Loyal, earnest, untested beyond a few border skirmishes. Bran's knowledge of history told him Mooten would die in Duskendale, his throat open defending the king's escape. That was still years ahead. "Leave me," Bran spoke, and the words came as the king's. But they resonated differently, calm where Aerys's speech more often trembled. There followed hesitation. Leather boots shuffled. Then Mooten cleared his throat. "Pyromancer Bellis wishes audience, sire. The hour is late, but he claims your command was urgent." Nan said it. A memory surfaced unbidden, Aerys's voice ranting at council, demanding wildfire caches beneath the streets to keep his subjects loyal. Mooten stood behind the throne, face wooden as the king spat fury at the Tyroshi envoy. Bran forced himself to breathe. If he denied Bellis now, what might shift? The chain of events was brittle. A single new weight could shatter it. "Tell Bellis to return at dawn," Bran said. "And fetch the queen instead." Dead silence. Then, "The queen, your grace." Rhaella. He tasted the name, felt warmth flicker within the king's marrow. Once the name had been beloved. Now, it aroused dread. Yet Bran sensed Aerys's buried yearning, to be comforted, to be seen as he had once been. Mooten muttered obedience, and withdrew. The latch clicked. Quiet returned, thicker than before. Bran turned from the mirror and crossed to the window. He unlatched the shutters, letting night air rush in. From here, Blackwater Bay stretched luminous. Lanterns bobbed upon anchored galleys, their reflections trembling across black water like strings of jewels. A dragon's roar of surf beyond the breakwater carried faintly. Somewhere within Aerys, yearning stirred. To mount a dragon as forebears had, to ride star-high and see his kingdom not as a web of treacheries, but as a tapestry of wonders. Bran tasted the desire and fed it. Memory of summer wind across Winterfell's battlements, of freedom on shaggy direwolf back. Aerys inhaled, exhaled, and for a moment, madness loosened its stranglehold. The door creaked anew. Soft slippers padded across rug. A familiar scent preceded the queen. Lavender and cedar, an oil she favored since girlhood. Rhaella paused, hesitant. "Aerys." Her voice was low, worn from nights of weeping. Bran sensed more than knew. She carried sorrow like a shawl that could never be set aside. Bran turned. Rhaella's cheeks were pale. Shadows cupped her eyes. She wore a simple nightgown belted with tasseled silk. Hands clasped at her waist, fingers white. Fear shaped her posture, yet hope fluttered there too, faint as a moth near a candle. Bran saw that hope and stepped toward it. "I wanted to see you." Hard words to form, for Aerys had not said them without malice in years. They left Bran's, Aerys's, lips gentle. The queen flinched as though expecting a blow, then blinked. "Is something wrong?" She studied him, searching for the madness that usually danced in his gaze. Seeing, perhaps, a kinder glint, she edged a breath closer. Bran opened his, Aerys's, mouth, but no prepared speech waited. Instead, memories tumbled. Firstborn Rhaegar's infancy, the night the babe clutched father's finger, a shared joke after maesters pronounced the babe healthy. Nights of candlelight plotting tourneys and pageants to celebrate the prince. Whispered dreams of a gentle realm. Bran let the warmth flood him. "Do you remember Summerhall?" he asked. The question tasted of smoke and grief, for Summerhall had burned on the day of Rhaegar's birth. Rhaella's eyes glistened. "I try not to," she murmured. "Perhaps we should." He extended a hand. Rhaella's breath caught. Slowly, so slowly, she reached. Their fingers met. Her skin was cool, trembling. Bran poured comfort through the contact, as a tree might feed sapling with buried roots. "You are safe. You are seen." Aerys's body swayed, a sudden wave of exhaustion threatening collapse. Bran guided him to a chair near the hearth. He gestured, and Rhaella sat across. Silence spun between them. Not brittle now, but tentative. Fragile like new ice forming upon a pond. Bran studied her. Lines of sorrow marred a face still lovely. He thought of his own mother. How Catelyn's love shielded her children like steel. Here was another mother, wounded, yet unbowed. He longed to tell her everything, that he was not her husband but a boy from winters yet to come, that dragons would dance again and kings would fall, that her own children's fates twined with prophecies whispered in a tower. But any revelation risked madness greater than Aerys's. Instead, Bran spoke of small things. Gardens, music. A child's laughter heard in corridors earlier that evening. Little Aelia, their youngest for now, chasing a kitten. Rhaella's lips curved faintly. She spoke of Rhaegar's lessons, of how the prince composed songs now more than he practiced swordplay. They talked, and Bran listened to his own voice. Aerys's voice, steady, kind, coaxing memory of courtship, rather than quarrel. Rhaella's shoulders eased. She reached across the table, touched his wrist. "You seem changed." "Perhaps I am." Bran felt Aerys rouse in alarm, half aware of intrusion. He smothered the panic with calm. "For tonight, at least, I wish to remember who we were." Candle wax shrank. Shadows lengthened. At length, Rhaella rose. She circled the table and laid a kiss upon Aerys's hair. "Sleep," she whispered. "Let the nightmares rest tonight." She withdrew, leaving scent of lavender and hope in her wake. Bran remained seated, heart thudding. The strain of holding consciousness within another man, across years, pressed like stone upon marrow. He sensed the weirwood call tug like a tide, urging return, but he also felt time's current bending. Aerys' mind, though bruised, glimmered clearer. If Bran withdrew now, would madness reclaim him? Or had a seed been planted? He rose, staggered to the writing desk. Ink, quills, wax signet waited. He selected fresh parchment, dipped quill, and began to write. He wrote of dreams, of a realm prospering not through fear but justice, of wildfire sealed away forever, of small folk safe beneath high walls, of dragon flame wielded only against darkness far to the north where none yet dared look. He wrote of love, of a husband's vow to shield wife and children from the plague of suspicion. He wrote as Bran might pen a letter to the future, but he signed with curling flourish. Aerys, king of the Andals, the Rhoynar, and the first men. The words lay dark and wet. Bran sprinkled fine sand to blot. He folded the parchment, pressed warm wax, stamped with dragon seal. He slid the letter beneath a ledger Rhaella would open at dawn. Let her read, let her wonder, let a spark strike tinder. Weariness gnawed. Bran moved to the narrow bed behind a silk screen, lay upon embroidered pillows. He drew velvet coverlet over skeletoned thin legs. The room whispered with the hush of sleeping stone. From balcony came the distant cry of gulls on night currents. Bran closed the king's eyes. He felt Aerys stir inside, a dreamer awakening into dream, confused at the change in burdens, but still breathing. Bran withdrew gently, loosening mental fingers from threads of muscle and bone. He drifted upward, through ceiling, past slate tiles slick with dew, into the star-shot sky. Below, the red keep glowed faintly. No wildfire yet burned beneath its streets. Only torches, hearth fires, the glow of possibility. He hovered at the zenith of an unseen dome. The greenseer sight opened, roads outswept like veins, ships bobbed, dawn waited beyond horizon's rim. Somewhere ravens croaked, restless. Bran felt the cold hand of paradox brush his thoughts. What he had done this night might shift all to come, or perhaps the ink remained fixed, and history would conspire to right itself. He could not yet know. But he had offered a breath of mercy to a soul choking upon its own smoke. Sometimes a breath is all one needs to step back from the brink. Winds mauled his phantom cloak. The pulse of living wood called him home. Bran turned north in spirit and flew, trailing behind him the faintest echo of a king whispering in sleep. Remember, Summerhall. Remember, love. See here. Bran carried those words into the waiting dark, not as burden, but as promise. K. Time T. PGSQL. Dawn bled slow scarlet into the sky above Winterfell, kissing the ancient ramparts with first light. In the Godswood, The heart tree's white face glimmered wet as though tears of sap clung beneath its crimson-carved eyes. Bran Stark jolted awake upon the moss at its roots, chest heaving. Breath fogged the chilly northern air. Summer had not yet conquered spring's lingering chill. The rough bark pressed cool against his shoulder blades, and only then did he realize his arms and legs were numb where he had lain motionless all night. Nearby, Mira Reed crouched, spear across her knees, peering at him with the patience of reeds in wind. Bran tried to speak, but the name Aerys tangled behind his teeth. He swallowed, tasting iron and leaf sap. Mira reached to steady him. Her touch anchored him to flesh and earth. The phantom warmth of a mad king's bedchamber faded like smoke in a high wind. Home, he reminded himself. Winter fell. The east wall's ravens croaked overhead. Snowmelt dripped from stone mouths of gargoyles. He inhaled the scent of pine and distant cook fires and knew he was Bran once more. Yet, something remained inside him. The echo of candlelight on vellum, the tremor of fingers tracing words of mercy. He could still feel Aerys's hot pulse against his palms. He wondered whether the king would remember the touch of sanity or dismiss it as dream. Already time tugged at him, urging the Greenseer to look again, to measure what had shifted. But exhaustion tethered him to the grass. "You went far," Mira said, voice hushed by reverence for the godswood. "You were gone longer than ever." Bran nodded. His lips tingled with the taste of Dornish red. "I saw the south," he whispered. "The heart of fire." He did not explain. Mira did not press. She only helped him into his chair and pushed him along the dew-slick path back toward the castle proper. Somewhere a dire wolf howled greeting to the dawn. Summer's voice, Bran thought. Though the giant wolf had been half wild of late, roaming leagues beyond the shattered forests near the wall. As Mira guided him through the courtyard, Bran's mind strayed south. Across hundreds of leagues, the Red Keep rose in his memory, and with it, the fragile hush after dawn. Nanol, PGSQSQ. In King's Landing, morning's first bells pealed from the septs, summoning faithful and faithless alike to prayer. Sir Garin Mooten stood at post outside the royal apartments, helm under arm, blinking away the dregs of sleepless night. He had not dared close his eyes after the strange summons to fetch the queen, an unheard-of order. The guard could not decide whether the deviants presaged torments or triumphs. Kings did not shift temperament like winds, yet last night the king's tone had been calm, almost kind. Within the solar, King Aerys stirred on velvet pillows. Slivers of gold sunlight spilled through casement slats, dust motes dancing in bright eddies. A moment passed before memory returned, sudden as a lash. A letter written by candlelight, Rhaella's hand in his, a gentleness he had not felt since Rhaegar was small. He sat up, pressing a palm to his brow. It felt as though a troop of knights had charged through his skull. Yet beneath the ache lay clarity, as though fever had broken. He glanced to the table. There the spilled wine had dried burgundy upon parchments. There, half hidden beneath a ledger, peeked a folded letter bearing his seal. He did not recall hiding it. He slid it free, broke wax, read. Handwriting unmistakably, he stared back. Yet the words read like counsel from a wiser ghost. He paused where he wrote of burying grievances, of forging trust in place of fear, of shielding his subjects from undue flame. He caught his breath at mention of wildfire. Let no flame born of alchemist guild kindle within the city walls, lest it devour all I vow to protect. Aerys' gaze flicked toward the corner, where a jeweled flintlock rested atop a half-opened crate of wildfire vials, each stoppered in thick clay. Madness whispered from that corner still. Burn them, burn the turncloaks, burn bright and cleanse. Yet the whisper felt fainter this morning, muted by recollection of a voice within his dream. Remember Summerhall. Remember love. He set the letter down. Rhaella entered without knocking, unusual boldness softening to wariness as she beheld his sober expression. Her shawl of dove gray draped her narrow shoulders, and pale hair spilled unbound to waist. For a heartbeat, husband and wife studied each other as children might peer at reflections in rippling pond. recognizing yet uncertain. "You slept?" she ventured. "I dreamed," Aerys answered. "Yet perhaps I woke." She laid a tray of bread and fruit upon the desk, poured watered wine. Watching him, she murmured, "You spoke of Summerhall. I thought you had banished the word from your tongue." "Below." The king's throat tightened. Summerhall was the spear that lanced his dreams, the day his father's folly burned kin and kingdom alike. "I banished nothing," he admitted. "I only drowned it. But drowning does not kill sorrow. It floats back up, bloated and fouled." Raella's violet eyes shimmered. "What would you do with sorrow if not drown it?" He considered. The dream voice of Bran Stark, though he could not name it, whispered answer. "Plant it like seed. Let it birth wisdom." But Aerys knew not how to shape words to insight. Instead he reached, took her hand. Shock crossed her face, then tears rushed hot to lower lashes. They sat thus, while bells chimed tierce. Mateo. PGSQL. The small council assembled late that morning, summoned by no herald but rumor. Lord Commander Gerald Hightower arrived first, white cloak pristine upon broad shoulders. Next came Grand Maester Pycelle, beard trailing long as his robes. Lord Carlton Chelstead, the irritable hand, promoted only months before, strode in briskly, clutching scrolls of tax levies. Beside him walked Rossart, head pyromancer, eyes gleaming green as his potions. Aerys entered without flourish. The council rose. Faces flickered surprise at absence of ornate velvet cloak or gemmed crown. The king wore only simple black doublet trimmed with red silk. He waved them sit. "We have work," he said, voice hoarse but even. "First, the matter of wildfire." At that, Rossart's pale brow lifted. He smiled eager. "Your Grace, the latest charges shall be halted." Aerys interrupted. "No further caches beneath the city. The substance is unstable. It breeds fear instead of loyalty." Rossart blinked as though struck. "But your Grace, your own orders. Now I resign them." Carlton Chelstead's mouth parted. He looked to the pyromancer, then to the hand who had been until this moment overshadowed himself. "It is wise, perhaps, to limit stockpiles inside walls," he ventured, cautious. "Not limit," Aerys corrected. "Seize. Move existing barrels to the cellars of Dragonstone under secure guard. I will inspect the work myself." Hightower's steely gaze softened with approval. Pycelle stroked beard, calculating. "Your Grace." Rossart began again, sweat beading, the expense of transport, the risk at sea. "Risk?" Aerys' tone chilled. "Would you rather risk my capital? A single spark could reduce half the city to ash. Or have you forgotten Summerhall?" Silence slammed the chamber. Chelstead swallowed. Pycelle's eyes widened. He'd never heard the king reference that tragedy aloud. Aerys leaned forward. "I have not forgotten. I was there. My father's quest for dragonfire slew good men and women, burned children in their beds. I shall not add King's Landing to that pyre." He exhaled, slow. "Rossart, you will obey. Fail me, and you'll find black cells darker than any vault of yours." The pyromancer bowed low, trembling. "As you command." Aerys shifted gaze to Chelstead. "Hand, draft edicts. Compensate the guild for safe removal, but no more experiments within city limits. Assign the city watch to escort convoys." Chelstead bowed, relief mingled with respect. "At once, your Grace." "Next," Aerys said. "Tax remission for the crown lands this planting season. Drought pinched harvests last year. Levy them now, and we sow rebellion." "No." Pycelle protested that remissions would leave granaries half-funded. Aerys countered with reallocation of royal wedding tariffs and Tyroshi treaty silver, saved from last month's renegotiation. The council blinked at the king's uncharacteristic mastery of numbers. Chelstead scribbled, though puzzlement creased his brow. Hightower sat straighter, as if a weight lifted from plate. Only when business concluded did Aerys dismiss them. Councilors shuffled out whispering. Rossart lingered till last, bowed deep. Whatever else he plotted, awe overshadowed cunning. Aerys watched them go, feeling as though his blood ran cleaner. He wondered again at the dream. A boy's voice had guided his quill, anchored his rage, offered balm for old wounds. Could a wraith of grief become guardian? He pressed thumb to temple and exhaled. Niwanadimao. PGSQL. North of the neck, Bran listened to ravens gossip on the rookery ledge above Maester Luwin's tower. Their black beaks opened and closed in argument. He heard meanings beyond words, hints of shifting winds far south. Some ripple had begun. The king's council had met. Secrets flew like cinders. The future's tapestry shimmered, threads twisting into new pattern. Bran's heart pounded with elation and fear. The past might resist. The tide of destiny often reclaimed territory with ruthless force. At midday he summoned Jojen Reed within the library's hush. Candle smoke coiled around dusty tomes. Bran spoke of what he had done. Jojen's moss-green eyes darkened with dread. "You risk breaking the arch of time," Jojen murmured. "If stone in foundation shifts, the tower may topple on us all. But what if it stands stronger?" Bran countered. "What if preventing madness prevents war, Robert's rebellion, the dragon's death?" Jojen knelt by the hearth, tracing ash on flagstones. "Visions seldom show us whether change betters or blackens. The ink may dry twice over, Bran, or blood may rewrite in darker strokes." He glanced up. "The Night King still stalks beyond the wall in our now. One altered dragonfire in south could spare no one here when winter comes." Bran faltered. He had considered Aerys. He had not weighed every domino. Could his mercy unmake the alliances that would stand against the dead? What if Rhaegar never died on the Trident? Would Lyanna live? Jon Snow never be born? Layers of consequence unfurled like infinite scrolls. Bran rubbed cold arms. Mere a step from stacks, spear butt tapping stone. "We can watch. If Bran changed one night, he can look again. We'll follow each ripple." Jojen pursed lips. "Follow, yes. But act again." Each step heavier, he turned solemn gaze on Bran. Promise restraint. Bran lowered eyes. In Aerys' mind he had felt something rare. A tyrant's spark of humanity, looking up like a child from beneath rubble. Could he abandon that child? But he owed the living future too. "I promise caution," he said, though doubt warred with conviction. "Oh." PGSQL. That evening in King's Landing, Prince Rhaegar returned from the armory yard after sparring with Sir Harbert. Sweat darkened his silver hair. His harp-calused fingers trembled from sword shock. He rarely practiced so late, yet something in the air crackled. Rumor of his father's counsel stirred whispers along every corridor. He found Queen Rhaella waiting outside his father's solar, expression inscrutable. She caught her son's gaze, a small smile curving. "He wishes to see you," she whispered. Rhaegar's stomach fluttered. In years past, audiences with his father meant lectures on betrayal, on watchfulness, on the false smiles of Tywin Lannister. Whispers said Rhaegar schemed with traitors, though the prince's heart bled for peace alone. He braced, stepped within. Aerys stood at the window, glow of the setting sun turning silver gold hair red-orange. Rhaegar knelt, but the king bid rise. When Rhaegar straightened, he glimpsed father's eyes, clearer, steadier than in memory of months. "You ride to Summerhall tomorrow," Aerys said. Surprise dashed across Rhaegar's fine-boned face. "Alone, your grace." "With me." Rhaegar blinked. "I thought you swore never to tread those ruins again." Aerys' gaze drifted beyond city walls, toward hills where ghosts danced in memory. "I thought many things," he murmured. "Now I must question them." He drew breath. "I will look upon the ashes of my father's folly, and swear no such folly shall mark my reign further." Rhaegar's heart hammered. Then, "There will be no more wildfire." "None beneath King's Landing," Aerys confirmed. "I have ordered it removed." He met his son's eyes. "Your mother believes you were born amidst flames so you might be their master. I think perhaps you were born to teach your father fire's cost. Come with me. Sing me the song of Summerhall's dead. Let the ghosts hear a prince's sorrow, and know we remember them not as victory, but warning." Tears pricked Rhaegar's eyes, unashamed. He bowed low. "It will be as you command, and as I desire." Aerys placed a hand, thin, cold, on his son's shoulder. "We begin anew." The gesture startled them both. Then Aerys released, crossing to desk where a map of Crownslands lay unrolled. He traced roads to Storm's End, to the Kingswood, to Duskendale's Bluff. "Many lords will doubt, your uncle Tywin most of all. We will show them a king need not rule with fear alone." Rhaegar exhaled. Hope lodged within his chest like an ember refusing to die. Nelern? PGSQL. Far across the narrow sea, Tywin Lannister sat in Golden Tooth study, reading Ravenbearer's missive describing the council's orders. Candlelight played across his lion-ringed fingers as he read twice, thrice. Wildfire removal, tax remission, talk of mercy. Softness cloaked as prudence. Tywin's jaw tightened. He had once served that king, forging order from chaos. Then the king had grown cruel, slights festering. Tywin surrendered the hand's chain in disgust. Now rumors spoke of new leaf turned. Could a madman recover? He tossed parchment into hearth, watching flame curl edges brown. Whether Aerys sane or no, instability reigned. Tywin measured possibilities. Align anew, or wait for collapse. Steel glinted behind his pale green eyes. Storm clouds might disperse, but the lion never sheathed claws. Nedin. PGSQL. Dusk settled over Winterfell. Bran sat alone by his chamber's window, candle at elbow, quill scratching. He copied Maester's treatise on green seer ethics into new script, hoping labor might tether mind to present. Yet shadows at blade of lamplight whispered south. He closed eyes and taste of salt and smoke flooded senses again. Somewhere a ship's lantern swung in Blackwater Bay. Aerys dined with Rhaella and Rhaegar. Roast duck, almond milk, bread still steaming. Voices low, conversation halting yet civil. The tapestry indeed changed. Mira appeared, bearing trencher of spiced venison. "Eat," she urged, setting plate before him. Bran realized how hunger gnawed. He devoured mouthfuls, savoring pepper heat, marveling at simple pleasure. "Your face looks lighter," Mira observed. "Whatever you did, part of you is glad." Bran wiped grease from chin. "I saw warmth where there was only fire, but I fear what cold may seep in elsewhere." She squeezed his hand. "The world turns no matter our fears." Bran nodded, though dread coiled. He thought of Robert Baratheon. Would the Storm Lord raise in arms if Lyanna Stark were never stolen or killed? Would Ned Seldom march from Winterfell? Would House Stark avoid the butchery of South? If so, might they remain untested, unready when others came? The webs tangled. Nenro. PGSQL. South of Storm's End. Lyanna Stark rode with her brothers Benjen and Branton on progress, escorting their father toward River Run for Lord Hoster's tourney. The party camped along tranquil river meadow, July flowers nodding under star-strewn sky. Lyanna laughed as Benjen attempted clumsy lute tune. Brandon swore the strings cursed by children of the forest. No shadow as yet darkened her joy. But fate listens. Ripples spread. Across hills, a band of sellswords tracked coined promise from Lords Connington and Caron, schemers plotting kidnap of maiden sister to gain favor at court. In the old timeline, such plot failed. A bigger storm intervened. Now with King's eye turned inward to contrition, his spies sought peace, not intrigue. The sellswords advanced unchecked. When Bran warged again that night, slipping beyond his shivering body, he intended merely to watch Summerhall Road. Yet the weirwood drew him to the meadow. He saw moonlight glint on steel, heard muffled curses as sellswords debated best moment to strike. Terror lanced him. If they seized Lyanna, Ripple might warp further still. Should he intervene? Could he inhabit Benjen or a camp hound, raise alarm? The promise to Jojen echoed. Restraint. But inaction here could birth tragedy sooner than before. Bran's spirit quaked. He scouted as owl, silent swoop over tents. There by camp perimeter, a shaggy wolfhound dozed. Bran brushed its dreaming mind. Sense and hunger, loyalty etched like runes. If the hound barked, The camp would wake. He slid into canine senses. Earth scent, rich, distant roasting hair. The metallic tang of strangers. The hound stiffened, lips curling. Bran urged a warning cry. The dog loosed thunderous barks. Horses snorted. Men jolted awake. Swords rasped. Bran leapt free, returning to owl wings, watching from branch. Sellswards, startled, scattered into treeline. Guardsmen pursued. 2 were run down, captured. Under torchlight they confessed higher. Brandon Stark's fury matched wildfire. He vowed to hunt conspirators to Ashford and beyond. Bran exhaled, heart hammering. A small nudge, perhaps harmless. Yet consequences stacked like dice in cup. Now, PGSQL. On the Summerhall Road, the royal party rode 2 days hence. Ruined towers jutted from weeds. Charred stones black against summer sky. Rooks nested in broken arches. Nettles clawed between flagstones once shining. Aerys dismounted, boots crunching ash that still whispered of dragonfire. Rhaegar walked at his side, silent. Kingsguard fanned around, silent. Only wind hissed through shattered hall. Aerys approached the bone-white stump of weirwood long dead, killed by heat of tragedy, ringed by blackened marble. He knelt, fingertips brushing cracked bark. Memories flooded. Screams, smoke, the smell of burning flesh, the wail of newborn Rhaegar swaddled in Riella's arms. Tears slid unchecked down his cheeks. He bowed head. Rhaegar touched father's shoulder. "Let the past burn no longer," he said, voice trembling. Aerys rose. "It will not," he vowed. "I swear by the ashes of Summerhall." And in that moment Bran, watching through wing of distant raven, felt something shift in the spectral geometry of history. A hinge click into new notch. Fires banked. But far to north beyond the wall, cold wind sharpened claws, for ancient powers stir when balance tilts. PGSQL. In the lands of always winter, the Night King stood upon glacier edge, blue eyes reflecting shifting aurora. He sensed threads of fate tugging south, a king tempering flame that once lured armies to rebellion, births delayed, deaths unmade. Balance threatened. The dead cared not for mortal politics, yet prophecy pinned on convergences of fire and ice. Disturb ice and fire both, and convergences fracture. The Night King lifted frost-encrusted hand. Wind howled. Ravens scattered from black branches as chill deeper than night burst across endless snows. New horrors stirred in ice wombs. The dead marched a league that night, as though hurried by some unseen urgency. Nenuel. PGSQL. In King's Landing, Rossert worked under flickering torchlight, packing silver-stoppered jars into straw-lined crates. His apprentices murmured incantations to stabilize fluid. The guild would obey the decree outwardly. But wildfire was more than royal weapon. It was secret alchemy pursued for centuries to birth dragons of flame. Rossert fingered copper amulet, eyes alight. He would move the worst of the substance beyond Dragonstow's inventory, seeding stashes where only the faith militant might not look. Should the king falter, Rossart would be ready to reignite destiny. PGSQL. Tywin's raven arrived at King's Landing as dawn parted fog. The letter, formal, courteous, congratulated the king on wise reforms, offered Lannister gold to fund convoying wildfire to Casterly Rock's remote storerooms pending delivery to Dragonstone, thus sparing royal coffers. Aerys read, suspicious but intrigued. Old wounds scabbed over do not heal at once. Still, he penned cautious assent. When Rhaella read the letter, she sighed relief. Rhaegar offered counsel. Take generosity. Keep a strict tally. Lord Tywin never spends coin lightly. Numbs her. Thus alliances realigned along fresh lines, yet seeds of mistrust lay dormant in softer soil. Now and PGSQL. At Winterfell's hearth 2 days later, Jojen Reed shook with green dream. A stag crowned bleeding upon spiked gate, dragons screaming at dawn, a direwolf howling atop wall of shattered ice. Bran listened, skin crawling. Threads still wove chaos. He saw glimpses himself. A king in purple armor riding beyond Duskendale, wildfire still erupting, smaller yet deadly. Rhaegar Trident? Or New River? Too blurred. Mira leaned close, voice fierce. Whatever you did, you must weigh next steps with counsel. We three only see edges. The world is vaster than anyone, boy. Bran nodded. I will watch before I act again. Yet that night as Bran slept, Aerys dreamed of white wolves fleeing fields of blood while ravens with 3 eyes circled overhead. He woke screaming. Rhaella comforted him. Rhaegar fetched maesters. They found no fever. Yet fear gnawed again. Bran felt the scream across leagues, an echo through weirwood roots. Connection remained. He had not severed the bridge. He had merely crossed back. Now Aerys teetered between sanity and abyss. Guided by winds Bran no longer fully controlled. The boy stared at Winterfell's rafters. 5 hours, the user had told him. They wanted the story to last. The night ahead stretched infinite. Bran braced to navigate the narrowing path between mercy and doom. Oi, Kandi our way. PGSQL. The weeks that followed braided summer's warmth with whispers of change. Every breeze through the Red Keep's towers, carrying rumors as if the air itself had learned to gossip. Servants murmured that King Aerys was seen walking gardens at dusk with the queen upon his arm. That he paused to admire rose blooms, rather than demand their thorns be pruned in pyre. Torchbearers who once dreaded his midnight summons, now found the royal halls strangely hushed after moonrise. The king, it seemed, slept. Still, candles sometimes burned late beneath the solar door. And when the guardsmen traded shifts at dawn, they swore they heard the scratch of a quill, and the rustle of parchment, rather than the metallic hiss of sword, being drawn and resheathed in restless lunacy. Yet King's Landing was an old city with long memory, and wounds inflicted by fear never heal with one balm. Gold cloaks half believed their monarch's transformation a ruse, a calm before sudden storm. Merchants spoke of new decrees reducing import levies on grain, but also of pyromancers carting emerald vials down to the docks at night, when common eyes were turned away. For every rumor of mercy another hissed of treachery. One golden afternoon, Prince Rhaegar rode from the Mudgate at the head of a slender retinue, bound for the Crownlands villages to oversee repairs to a storm-smashed bridge. The city folk lined the cobbles cheering, though their shouts were tinged with awe rather than rowdy celebration. They saw in Rhaegar not only a prince but a harbinger. If he believed his father healed, perhaps it might be so. Some thrust blossoms toward his passing horse. Some bowed low. Rhaegar inclined his head to each. On the high parapet above, Aerys watched, fingers splayed upon warm stone. The sun gilded his unkempt hair, and for a moment, he looked not a madman, nor a repentant tyrant, but simply an aging father, yearning to mend bridges of more than timber and stone. In the streets below, a young bard named Tom of Seven Strings began a gentle tune upon his lute, verses praising princes who strummed harps as deftly as they wielded swords. The melody drifted upward, brushed the king's ears. Aerys closed his eyes. Memories of summer halls flame flickered, but the music wove through them like cool river water, soothing simmering embers. Still, in the royal apartments that night, he dreamed again of the direwolf howling on a broken wall of ice. And as always, Bran felt the dream across distance, a vibrato in the living roots beneath Winterfell's godswood. The boy woke shivering as though he'd slept beneath the farthest stars. Dawn at Winterfell broke crisp and bright, ravens cawing their ragged announcement. Bran commanded Quill once more, setting scratched vellum to chronicle each subtle shift he sensed. He wrote of sellsword scattered by a barking hound, of wildfire convoys sailing south along sea lanes under Lannister banners, of Tywin's lettered platitudes concealing patient schemes. He wrote of Jojen's green dream of the bleeding stag, and of the cold wind creeping sharper, pages piled like drifted snow beside him. At noon he rolled through the courtyard, where Mikken hammered crude spears for new recruits, where boys of the guard practiced shield wall under Roderick Castle's barked command. Bran watched steel clash and sparks fly. He wondered whether any of this would suffice if the wall's ancient magic faltered. His gaze drifted northward, to where distant horizon hid white oblivion. That night Bran slid once more into the weirwood net. He promised himself he would not reshape, only observe. The route spiraled him south, farther than before, across restless sea where storms brewed like cauldrons. He saw Dragonstone under slate clouds, saw crews unload crates banded with red wax seals. Each jar of wildfire glowed faintly when torchlight flared. Men handled them with reverence and fear, stacking deep in basalt vaults where sea spray licked stone. And he saw, too, a smaller cargo shunted aside, guided by Rossart's robed apprentices into hidden tunnels beneath abandoned smithies on the mainland. There, barrels were bricked behind false walls, sigils of the Seven scraped away, the sign of the fiery hand painted instead. Bran felt chill. A spark could ignite half the Roserad. He drifted inland to Harrenhal's blasted towers, where Lord Went made ready for a grand tourney, though coin grew scarce. In Bran's old reckoning, that tourney would host secrets and hearts aflame. Now, as he watched, ravens brought word of the king's surprising reforms, and Went wondered aloud whether a festival of chivalry might honor peace rather than cloak forbidden love. Bran glimpsed shades of possibility spinning fresh like spiderwebs in morning dew. He turned northward. At the Frostfang peaks, he found the skies churned by heavy snow, though it was summer below. White shadows moved in forests of crystal pines. He saw the Night King upon a glacier ridge, hand lifted, conjuring something unseen. As Bran hovered, a crack split the ice shelf. Out crawled figures of bone and rime, newborn wights staggering into dark. Fear jolted Bran. He felt his tether yank. He retreated, heart-pounding phantom beats. A raven's croak snapped him back to Winterfell's Godswood. Jojen knelt over him, shaking. "You were gone a day," the Crannog man whispered. "A day," Bran rasped, throat dry. Morning turned to dawn again. Jojen's expression laced relief and reprimand. "Do not lose yourself." Bran swallowed. "The dead gather." "They always gather," Jojen answered, though worry sharpened his voice like whetted steel. "We must prepare." Bran nodded. Preparation. Yet how, when South still shaped the fates? But he felt his promise to Mira and Jojen weigh heavier. Assess before act. For now, he would watch. There. PGSQL. South by Southwest, in the Stormlands. Robert Baratheon thundered across wet meadows on a black stallion, laughing as his retinue struggled to match his pace. The boar crest on his breastplate shone, his hammer swung across saddle pommel. He had just returned from Sharp Point, where smugglers had dared evasion of the crown's tariffs. But the letters waiting at Griffin's Roost intrigued him more than contraband wine. News of King Aerys' reformation and invitation to attend a council at King's Landing to discuss a grand tourney financed jointly by crown and leading houses. The old dragon stripped his fangs, Robert joked to John Connington. But there was speculation beneath his jest. If Aerys truly softened Robert's own grievances, for his father's debts unjustly called, for his realm tax to fuel alchemists, might at last settle. Yet Robert knew Tywin's offers seldom meant friendship. If the lion stalked the capital, a stag should keep antlers sharp. Robert ordered ravens. One to Eddard Stark, inviting him south to feast at Storm's End before any tourney. Another to Stannis at Dragonstone, asking report on wildfire stockpiles arriving. The Baratheon brothers seldom exchanged warmth. But this was urgent. If the alchemists ladled flame into the island's cellars, perhaps greater game brewed. At Dragonstone's grim keep, Stannis read his elder brother's missive by the orange glare of braziers. He had already counted 10 dozen jars stacked behind locked grates. The king's master-at-arms had sworn new guard, but Stannis mistrusted all secrets not his own. He wrote back in stiff script. Stocks contained, risk mitigated, vigilance unrelenting. He did not voice suspicion that some shipments had gone missing. he would investigate first. Enter PGSQL. In King's Landing, Varys moved through hidden passages like a pink spider, plump hands executing silent flourishes at every door he passed. The rumors of Aerys' transformation amused him. The Whisperer's network hummed louder than a hive of summer bees. He had served hard tyrant, and now served softening monarch. Either path offered different opportunities. For Varys, stability served crown, but chaos served Varys. One dusk he knelt before the Iron Throne with scroll in hand. Aerys, flanked by Hightower and Chelsted, bade him speak. "News from Pentos, your grace," Varys purred. "The Triarchs prepare new levies. Spies whisper of sellsword, captains hiring grievances, lost since the Blackfire pretenders faded. They speak of untested dragons and of thrones once promised by angry exiles." Aerys' mouth twisted. "Blackfire is ash, my line still sits the throne." "Just so," Varys inclined bald head. "Yet coin funds resentment. Might we sponsor goodwill? A royal marriage perhaps, binding Essos and Westeros?" Rhaegar, present to observe, stiffened. He suspected Varys meant his own unborn sister. The babe in Rhaella's womb? Rumored a girl prophesied to bind dragon's head to lion's heart. But Rhaegar's heart already composed ballads of a different love. One he sensed faded yet unformed. He spoke little, mind twisting like cord. Aerys waved a dismissive hand. No marriage until this realm steadies. Yet later in solitude he wondered, had his newfound mercy made him weak in Varys' soft eyes? Doubt formed like frost on still water, and Bran felt it pulse across the gulf. The king's sanity was new-forged steel, still hot, still malleable beneath hammer blows of whisper and intrigue. Instant PGSQL. Autumn crept closer. The harvest moon soared fat and gold above the wall. At Castle Black, Lord Commander Corran Stark, older brother to Eddard in this altered weave, walked parapets, breath pluming. He had taken the black after grievous injury in youth. Bran had not known this in the original tale, for originally Corran Halfhand belonged to another branch, but time had shifted bloodlines. The Watch's ravens returned scant but troubling messages, wildling tribes fleeing south ahead of unseen terror, white spotted roaming weeping forests well before full dark. Rangers vanished. Corran convened his senior officers, ordering double patrols though numbers dwindled. Samwell Tarly, still a shy son of minor reach lord exiled north, sifted through dusty annals in the Rookery trying to match patterns of rising dead. He quivered as he realized parallels to tales of the long night. He penned letters to the Citadel, but ravens rarely returned. Bran's dreams carried him there too. He saw Sam hunched over maps, and his heart warmed. One he trusted studied the threat, but would South heed when war drums of tourney beat louder? Nanmudesin, Vibinet. The tourney at Harrenhal loomed. Lord Went sent heralds far and wide, promising richest purses in a generation. Tilts by moonlight, on the God's eye. Banners answered. Arryn Falcon, Hightower Stone Tower, Tyrell Rose, Lannister Lion, Tully Trout. Robert Baratheon thundered from Storm's End, mail glinting. John Connington rode at side. The Dornish sent Oberyn with bright laughter and sharper spear. Even Eddard Stark, cautious but curious to see changed capital, journeyed south, taking Lyanna and Benjen, leaving Revan Karstark Castellan. Bran watched their progress each night, a flock of crows at his command. He felt thrill. Here the weave tightened. Harrenhal once birthed love and rebellion. What now? Inan? PGSQL. On the God's Eye shores, tents blossomed like wildflowers. Silk pavilions striped purple and gold, austere canvas of Starks, flamboyant Dornish awnings. Merchants hawked spiced nuts and Dornish red. Jonglers juggled torches at dusk, their fire reflections licking ripples of lake. The ruined towers of Harrenhal loomed black above festivities, windows like blind eyes. King Aerys arrived last. Riding in a dark carriage shuddered against dust. A hush fell when he emerged. He wore black velvet, lined in red satin. Simple by royal measure, yet he walked tall. The crowd bowed deep, uncertain if rumor of mercy meant safety, or a cunning spy on their deference. Aerys' gaze flicked across lords, He sought Tywin's tall form but found only golden lions on banners. The Lord himself delayed by matters in the west. That snub stung. He still craved Tywin's fearful respect, but he smothered the fire. Opening ceremonies dazzled. Knights of the Kingsguard jousted exhibition passes. Sir Arthur Dane shattered lances with effortless grace. Rhaegar entered lists on pale grey destrier, helm crowned with rubies. Yet instead of choosing Lyanna Stark as Queen of Love and Beauty, a spark that once ignited rumor, he carried no lady's favor. Instead, he saluted his mother. The crowd cheered. The ripple had diverged. In the practice yard, Robert Baratheon swung Warhammer at ironwood posts, splintering them with single strike. He shouted for Rhaegar to face him in friendly bout. The prince demurred, citing engagements. Robert laughed, friendly enough, for now. Yet in tavern tense that night, ale loosened a stag's tongue. He roared that dragons had grown soft, that he'd crack a prince's helm like an egg soon enough. Connington tried to hush him, but stories flew on wings of rumor. Across the lake, under willow copse, Lyanna Stark walked restless. She had ridden hard to the Southland's heat, yet felt chilled by watchful gazes. She sensed politics swirl like unseen currents. But instead of finding Rhaegar at the water's edge playing harp, she found only dusk frogs and hush of reeds. In this weave, their fates had not collided quite the same. Bran, nested in Raven high above, exhaled relief, but only briefly. For he saw in the shadows at Treeline the outlines of the same Sellswords who once threatened her on the road. They had escaped bonds, fled justice. Now they huddled with black-robed emissary bearing the fiery hand of the alchemists. He pressed purse of coin, pointed toward Lyanna, gestured toward distant camp of Baratheons and Starks. Bran's talons dug bark. He realized Rossart's conspiracy reached here. Wildfire bombs to be loosed amid pavilions, sowing chaos to discredit King's reforms and justify return to fear. Bran weighed his vow of restraint against looming massacre. He dove into hawks circling above, wings slicing air. With keen eyes he marked paths, counted vials strapped to packs. He banked toward the tourney grounds, screeching sharp and sudden. Below, Eddard Stark looked up, brow furrowing. The hawk cried again, frantic. At the same time, a hound in Stark camp pricked ears, hackles rising. Bran slipped mind into that beast, felt earth under paws, charged, barking fury. Guards startled. One followed the dog's trajectory and glimpsed figures in brush. Shout rang. Swords rasped. Sellswords hurled clay grenades, two shattered near empty field, spewing green blaze that roared high. Spectators shrieked. Panic rippled, but the main caches remained unsprung, the conspirators' timing ruined. Knights thundered on horseback to chase arsonists. One pyromancer dropped pack, which burst in flames, roasting him alive. Rossart's apprentice died screaming. Fire danced too near the king's dais. Aerys flinched, eyes wide. For heartbeat, old madness threatened. Burn them all echoed. But he saw Rhaella's terror, felt smoke of Summerhall. He seized control. "Water!" he shouted. Sand. No wildfire near wood. Soldiers obeyed. Sir Gerald Hightower used cloak to smother stray spark. Smoke rose but wind spared stands. Eddard and Robert rode shoulder to shoulder in pursuit, capturing two Sellswords dead. Under blade they confessed. The alchemist Rossart promised pardon and coin for mayhem that would be blamed on Dornish malcontents. Their words reached Lord Chelsted's ears. He strode to the king white with rage. Hours later, Rossart was dragged before the Iron Throne erected within Harrenhal's great hall. His fine robes burned at hem, eyes wild. He denied nothing, claimed he served higher destiny. "Your grace once desired cleansing flame. I merely obeyed the truest wish of dragons." "My wish has changed," Aerys hissed. "And kingship is not whim but will." He turned to Rhaegar. "Pass sentence." Rhaegar hesitated but met Rossart's glare. "You spilled innocent blood and conspired against the realm. You die." Sword fell swift. Rossart's body crumpled. In the shadows, Varys noted the ease with which dragon and wolf, stag and fish had united to thwart plot. Change indeed. New Hender, PGSQL. That night Harrenhal feasted not in revel but grim relief. Wildfire still glowed in glass flasks, cooling in ditch water. Queen Rhaella prayed with septus for victims burned. King Aerys walked ruins alone, stumbling to kneel by ancient hearth where heat lingered. Bran, hovering unseen, felt the king shake beneath weight of almost returning to madness. Yet he steadied, whispering, "Never again." The weirwood roots hummed in approval, or warning. At campfire near lake, Eddard, Robert and Jon Arryn shared low talk. Ned recounted hawk-cry that saved Lyanna. Robert swore gods of north sent omen. They toasted unseen savior. Their bonds deepened, not in rebellion, but brotherhood of averted doom. Yet across the smoke, Tywin Lannister at last arrived, his arrival overshadowed by day's horror. He studied charred patches, listened to whispers of king's new mercy at war with old fury. In his mind, calculus altered. Aerys still capable of frightening violence, yet tempered by sun and northern alliances. To grasp power, Tywin might need subtler blade or, if necessary, forge peace to mold it later. Near Eater. PGSQL Swat. Winterfell's ravens brought word of near catastrophe. Bran read Ned's letter, hands trembling. He had prevented tragedy, but again he had acted. He confessed to Jojen, who said nothing, only stared into flames. Finally, Jojen murmured, "Each breath of mercy may stoke other fires. See how swiftly blood nearly spilled." Bran answered, voice small, but it did not spill. Jojen touched his shoulder. "Not today." PGSQL. South of the Neck, Walder Frey plotted new alliances, hearing how Starks gained King's favor, how Baratheon and Dragon now dined together. In this shifting field, old men saw profit. He weighed betrothals, letters to Hoster Tully, and gold to lend government removing levies. Frey children scurried dispatches. In Old Town, the citadel buzzed. Archmaester Marwyn, bolder than colleagues, studied Corran Stark's raven about Walking Dead. He gathered sail for King's Landing to petition the throne for preparedness. Others scoffed. But the glass candle on Marwyn's desk had burned bright 2 nights running, an omen. PGSQL. While the realm repositioned, the Night King marched. He felt ripple of failure at Harrenhal like crack in frozen lake. Flames that should have sundered unity, instead forged it. Ice hated unity of living. He turned his armies west, seeking fractures elsewhere. Unaligned clans in Skagos, jealous holdfasts along lonely light. White winds keened. At Skagos' granite cliffs, whites crawled ashore on shattered driftwood. Village beacons lit, but died, as throats were ripped out. Deerwolves howled distant, but help was days away. Bran's dreams flickered. Snow-whitened beaches strewn with corpses whose eyes burned blue. He woke, screaming. Mira steadied him. Ravens flew to Lord Manderley for ships. Damn. PGSQL. Months slid toward winter. At court, Aerys enacted further reforms. Re-established peace commissions, pardoned minor lordlings previously accused of treason on rumor alone, commissioned granaries in Blackwater Rush Valley. Yet cracks remained. Paranoid nights, moments when torchlight cast shadows like enemies, whispers echoing halls. Rhaella frequently found him seated before mirror, staring as if seeking second face behind his own. Rhaegar, seeing father's vacillation, redoubled travels to win hearts. In Riverlands he negotiated lower tolls on Trident crossings. In Westerlands he mediated dispute over gold mine rights. Poets hailed him Dragon of Dawn. Robert clapped him on back, declaring him nearly good as a Baratheon. Lyanna enjoyed tourney trails, racing Benjen across meads, untroubled by southern courtiers. Only once did she glimpse Rhaegar alone strumming harp beneath willow. He smiled polite, but conversation strayed to songs of north wind rather than destiny. She parted amused rather than enthralled. Bran sighed gratitude. Even that. Yet destiny seldom abides gentle alteration. On one chill evening at Storm's End, Rhaegar arrived to meet Robert, bringing lute and scrolls. They sang ballads, shared mead. Robert jested of sister's wit. Rhaegar spoke of prophecy unfulfilled. He confided dream of dragons' 3 heads requiring union of fire and ice. Robert laughed it away, but Connington took note. Prophecy births zeal in men's hearts. Connington wrote private letter to Tywin. Prince sees portents. May be steered to allies, subtle. Tywin's reply. Ensure Prince looks west for bride with lion's dowry. Connington began quiet push for Rhaegar to wed Cersei. The seed once denied might sprout now. Rhaella, aware of maneuvering, counseled caution. Cersei proud, Tywin cunning. But Aerys, still resentful of Tywin's resignation, resisted. Yet whispers seeded doubt. Gymni? PGSQL. Winter finally draped white shawl upon the north. At the wall, the dead assembled. Fist of the first men ringed with whites like living corkscrew. Corin, Stark dispatched his fastest ravens. The long night stirs, wax seals, flew south riding icy wind. At Winterfell, Bran sat before roaring hearth with Ned, returned at last. The brothers spoke late. Ned recounted near disaster at Tourney. The kings measured mercy. Bran, holding secret heavier than steel, merely listened. Ned said, "For the first time, I believe peace might last." Bran met his eyes and silently prayed his brothers' hope would not founder on frozen wave. That night, Bran dreamed himself back into Aerys unbidden. He found the king pacing the solar, hands shaking. On desk lay parchment, word of whites at the wall forwarded by Pycelle. Maesters dismissed it as wildling myth. Yet, the letter stirred old fear in Aerys. Fear not of rebellion, but of darkness beyond knowledge. He clutched candle, muttering. Bran felt his panic escalate. Sanity wobbled. Bran merged more firmly, whispered calm inside skull. "Remember Summerhall, remember mercy." Aerys steadied, breath evening. He seized quill, penned command. Dispatch royal contingent of maesters and builders north. Send grain to Castle Black. Establish watchtowers along Queen's Crown. He signed, sealed, then collapsed into chair, trembling but resolved. Bran withdrew, reeling. He had intervened again, yet to strengthen defense against true enemy. Would subtlety suffice? The dead advanced while living debated rumors. Time running. Nanderme. PGSQL. On Dragonstone, Stannis received orders to escort grain fleet north. He obeyed, though grumbled of costs. Davos Seaworth, smuggler turned knight, captained flagship. They sailed with winter wind, hulls laden with barley and dried beans. The convoy neared Eastwatch as blizzard swirled. Whites lurked along shoreline cliffs. Davos lanterns guided ships through ice-choked shallows, unloading before night fell full. Jon Snow. No longer snow, for he never existed? In this world, maybe newborn within Eyrie, maybe unborn. So other men, Gren and Pep, carried sacks through knee-deep drifts. Food arrived, but hope still thin. Venetabos. V. Ben Nat. Far to east, in Valyrian ruins, Drogon hatched from secret clutch beneath smoking fissure. This too had diverged. Without war on the horizon, magic's long dormant stirred differently. A lone warlock of Korth watched from scrying pool, considering letters to new king. Dane. Ivnet. A moon waned. At King's Landing, Tywin finally arrived to present Cersei before court. She stood radiant in crimson silk, hair a golden mantle. Aerys met them with icy courtesy. Tywin offered dowry unmatched, though bitterness lined his crisp words. Rhaella's eyes narrowed. She sensed trap. That evening, feast hall brimmed. Varys whispered to Chelstead of wildfire caches undiscovered. Chelstead relayed to King, fueling fresh unease at Tywin's true motives. Aerys, unsettled, announced he would consider marriage alliances later. Not that night. Cersei's face tightened. Tywin's frost returned. In private gallery above, Bran perched as ghost, watching fault lines reopen. He yearned to shield the fragile progress. But interventions grew dangerous. Each pull might unravel. Mepsim Sesh. PGSQL. Down the Shadow City alleys, Rossart's surviving acolytes plotted vengeance. Their master dead, they swore to ignite capital with wildfire orchestrated to implicate Han Chelstead, whose reforms threatened Guild's monopoly. They snuck between granaries, placing kegs disguised as casks of Dornish olive. Bran glimpsed them one midnight but hesitated. Should he move? He found Jojen in dream, begged help. Jojen said, "Guide, a loyal man. Do not bear blade yourself." Bran thought of Davos, of Sam, of Ned. But they were far. He turned to one unsung. Jaime Lannister, young, restless, sworn to Kingsguard, still uncorrupted by years of impossible duty. Bran slipped into Raven, perched near White Sword Tower, croaked until window opened. Jaime, polishing sword, glanced out. The bird's cry struck memory of old stories, ravens as omens. Bran projected image of green fire under granary eaves. Jaime blinked, shaken. The knight-strapped sword followed his instinct into night. He discovered the casks, just as alchemists prepared fuse. Fight ensued, steel flashed, sparks flew but did not ignite. One alchemist fell, others fled. Jaime ordered guards to douse area, arrested conspirators. At dawn, he reported plot. King Aerys listened. Old paranoia flared but found justification. He praised Jaime's vigilance, promoted him to lead investigations. High approval lit Jaime's pride. Yet Bran worried. Closeness between Lion Son and Dragon King might shift other axes. Oh. PGSQL. Winter deepened. On Skagos, Whites marched south across frozen sea toward Bear Island. Meg Mormont rallied axes, but message for aid took long. Bran roused inside Summersight, urged Direwolf Pack to harry dead. Snowfields ran red with rot, but numbers rose. At last, Bran convened secret council within Winterfell's library. Maester, Luwin, Joian, Mira, and Robb. Now heir in this timeline where Brandon rode to River Run, then warless. Bran spoke of Walking Dead. Luwin listened skeptical, but Jojen's dream and ravens from Wall convinced him. They planned to muster men north early. Stockpile dragonglass daggers mined from Skagos' last quarries. Ned returned from south with sacks of obsidian gifted by Prince Rhaegar. An offering after old texts suggested its power. Bran marveled. Echoes of histories he once read now unfolded anew. Nimdernhagdi. PGSQL. One dawn months later, word reached King's Landing. Eastwatch's eastern tower fell to dead assault. Ravens blackened sky flying south. This finally shook the realm to marrow. Small folk panicked, lords whispered. Tyrells offered harvest wagons. Martells promised spearmen against dead foe no Southron kingdom had faced. Aerys convened great council. Winter's war would unite or doom them. Rhaegar stood beside father, sword dawn lone by Arthur Dayne shining. He proposed forming army of the living, calling banners from every corner. Robert slammed hammer against floor in agreement. Ned, stark, stoic, seconded, pledging North's lead. Tywin measured, then declared Lannister gold would fund forges for dragonglass arrowheads, steel for Wall's repairs. Aerys, seeing old friend bend knee, felt tears sting. Perhaps world indeed changed. Yet Bran sensed timeline twisting taut. War that once set realm against itself now pivoted to unite it, but great cost loomed. He saw flashes. Dragon wings over ice deserts, Night King's spear of crystal and doom, Aerys kneeling upon battlements whispering to Phantom. He felt his own spirit entwined with fate threads. One final winter night he sat beneath Hearttree. Wind howled, branches rattled like bones. Mira sat at his side. "Do you regret?" she asked. "Not regret," he said, voice carrying weight of seasons despite boy's frame. "But the story runs far beyond me. I nudged one man's heart. Now all hearts beat toward Storm." She squeezed his hand. "Then let us meet Storm together." Snowflakes drifted onto Bran's cheeks, melting warm. Somewhere far away, a king who was once mad but now half-healed, stood on tower top and watched same snowflakes swirl. He breathed cold air and whispered, "We stand against darkness." And in the unseen gulf between, Bran felt that whisper echo through the roots of the world, stitching fire and ice into fragile, living tapestry. One breath, one choice, one hope at a time.